Okay, well, now it's time to go into our Ask Al segment where we share sales advice, answer questions from listeners. And so we've got a question today from a listener that I'm going to answer. If you have a question on sales that you'd like to submit to us to get answered on the Ask Al segment, you can email it to me, al.simon, S-I-M-O-N, at Sandler.com. al.simon@sandler.com. Just send in your question, and sales or sales management type question, and it just might get answered on the air. Today's question, Billy, comes from a listener who says, an ideal potential client called and asked us to bid. You probably never have that, right?
Occasionally.
Yeah, occasionally. So we're so excited. I sent in our quote and haven't gotten an answer. What do I do? Typical, classic situation. This is actually one of my pet peeves, is when people get a request for a quote or a request for a proposal, and all they do is fill something out or put something on paper, words on a screen, and send it in, and expect that prospect is going to engage with them, ask questions, and refine the quote and so on, and of course end up with a closed deal. And so they sit. Now, I remember talking to one of my prospects one time. I said, "How do you people get new business?" And he said, "I'm pretty sure they aggressively wait for the phone to ring." And it's just you can't blame the prospect for this. You cannot blame the prospect. Just because they said, "Hey, send us a quote," does not mean that you're going to get the business or even get a call back. And I don't know why people expect that to happen. So do not blame the prospect. Take responsibility. Go after this thing. And I'm sorry for this listener because their question is, what do I do? And the bottom line is, you're pretty much toast.
You find another company.
There you go. Find another prospect, because all the mistakes were made in the front end, and so you get someone calling in or emailing in or filling out a website form with an inbound lead, asking for information or a quote. That's cool. That's awesome, and that means your marketing's working, your lead gen's working. But your job then is to pick up the phone. That's your job. Pick up the phone and ask a few questions. And, do discovery before you put any kind of quote together of any kind, and then make sure that you have next steps set up. Now, we have this thing at Sandler we call the upfront contract, but you don't need to know all the details of that. Just know to make sure that you're setting correct expectations about a future conversation. Have it on the calendar, both your calendar and the prospect's calendar, and make sure you're doing that. Because when you get an inbound lead that you didn't expect, looking for a quote, it is quite possible that you are being what we call spreadsheeted. Right? They have to show due diligence to their stakeholders, and so they put these RFPs or RFQs out there. And but if you didn't know it was coming in advance, and maybe even help write it, you've probably already lost. Someone else has already been unofficially anointed, and you're column B or C or D on that spreadsheet. And so if you start to realize that you can do a better job on the front end when you first get that request, handle it correctly. So that's the answer to this one.
And I kind of agree with you there, Al. I mean, I think that it's coming from a contractor standpoint, if you reach out to somebody and they don't get back to you, that's already a red flag right there. Imagine what it's going to be like after you've already given them money and contracted them to do the work. We have a 24-hour policy at my office. Somebody reaches out, you have to get back to them within 24 hours. And you said it perfectly. When somebody reaches out to me, our main focus for the next step after we get back is to set the expectations. This is when you can expect us to come out. Once we come out, this is how long you can expect us to actually have the written bid back over to you.
Yeah.
So in my opinion, if you're the client, you should never have to ask the questions. We should always be telling you, hey, this is when we're coming, this is what time, this is when you can expect it. And that's how you run it. Believe it or not, I started my business off of these things right here. Yeah. I said, what are the 10 things that people hate about contractors? And I made a list of them. And I said, if I don't do those 10 things, I'll win.
There you go. I have a client that got one of these RFP in this case, that they didn't expect. It shows up. he calls up the issuer of the RFP and says, "Am I column B, C, or D on your spreadsheet?" Actually said that, and there was this uncomfortable silence on the other end of the phone at first, and then the guy started chuckling, and said, "Yeah, well, actually, you are." and so my client said, "You know what? That's cool. Tell you what, don't make me do all the detail work. Just tell me what you need to know from a high level standpoint. I'll do that for you, so you can show you've done due diligence. If you'll do this for me, I'll do that for you. If you do this for me, the next time we have a project, that you tell us in advance before you issue." And you know what? A year later, he got a deal from that company doing it that way.
That's awesome.
That is a pretty cool story, isn't it?
Yeah, that's that pre-sale question that a lot of people don't ask.
Yeah. So in Sandler, we call that a pattern interrupt.
A pattern interrupt.
Hey,
all right.
am I column B, C, or D on your spread? So there you go. So again, this has been the Ask Al segment of Simon Says Let's Talk Business. I'm your host, Al Simon. Thank you, Billy Gray, for being with us today.